Hello everyone, welcome to this thrilling episode of Battle. Today we're going to see Rango launching homemade rockets and blowing up the enemy's train. Rango was on his way to the camp when he ran into that soldier who killed his wife, and that soldier just kept shooting wildly but couldn't hit him at all. Seeing how talented the soldier was, Rango decided to stop and face him head on. He pulled out his bow and arrow and made quick work of him. Just then, a helicopter came buzzing in, beginning its bombardment on Rango. Luckily, he cleverly dove into the river, waiting in stealth for the helicopter to pass. Rango popped up like a creature from the deep, quickly dragging one soldier underwater, then flipped over and started fighting another soldier, watching as his comrade got beaten. The pilot panicked and jumped out of the helicopter, and Rango quickly took control, raining fire down on the Vietnamese soldiers below what a battle maniac. Rango landed the helicopter next to the cage where prisoners were held, swiftly taking out the nearby soldiers, and then freeing the captives, who cheered. But suddenly, a powerful enemy plane came flying. The soldiers went crazy shooting, bullets flying everywhere, and with a rocket attack, Rango's helicopter appeared to be shot down. It looked like something out of a horror movie. Curious pilot leaned in to see what was happening, and just then, Rango suddenly opened his eyes, grabbed the rocket launcher, and counterattacked, turning the tape. Rango flew prisoners back, thrilling soldiers like seeing a celebrity. Commander left with a complicated look, greeted by soldiers and the abandoning pilot. Rango saw him and kicked immediately. He stormed inside, shooting at the equipment that claimed to protect him, venting his rage while a shooting enthusiast. Hearing gunfire, the commander jumped, seeing Rango ahead. He tried to explain, but Rango wouldn't listen. Rango approached with his dagger, but in the end, reason triumphed over emotion. He knew he still had comrades waiting for him in Vietnam. He slammed the dagger into the table and thought to himself, "My comrades can't do without me." The general found Rango, urging him not to hate his country. Rango replied decisively, "This is what I want, not a game." After saying that, Rango strode forward, leaving behind a stubborn and proud silhouette. And then, in a breathtaking move, he actually poured whiskey directly onto his wound. This is simply unbelievable. Can you imagine? He even pulled out the sharp object stuck in his abdomen with his bare hands, showing no fear in the face of intense pain, a true warrior. Gritting through the excruciating pain, he carefully used the gunpowder from the bullets to treat his wounds. Having completed this arduous task, Rango finally succumbed and collapsed to the ground. While being a soldier is truly filled with challenges. Sometime after the Vietnam War, where did Rango's injuries come from? Turns out he was living as a monk in Thailand. He spent his days doing chores at the temple and occasionally participated in underground boxing matches, just looking to make a few bucks on the side. Before long, his former commander showed up again and told him about the situation in Afghanistan. This was getting serious. The Soviet invasion. Afghanistan was ablaze. U.S. weapons insufficient. Soviets cut communication. The U.S. military urgently needed to send agents to scout, hoping he would join, but Rango had lost trust in them. He turned down the general's requests. No matter how the general tried to persuade him, he just wouldn't budge, so the general left sadly. The general ventured into Afghanistan alone, but was hit by a Soviet helicopter before scouting, a real tragedy. The next day, the embassy informed Rango the general was captured. Rango didn't want to but had to take the risk. He made his way to Afghanistan and found the resistance leader, Rennie, and scored a bunch of U.S. military weapons. U.S. military tech amazed Rennie. Rango rode to enemy base, plotting revenge. Rango's commander was tortured by Soviets, and now Rango is rescuing him. The Soviet officers had heard about Rango's impending rescue and were completely dismissive about it. Rango and the resistance members arrived at the camp, where a defected soldier told Rango about the layout of the Soviet base, making him gleeful. Rango suggested sneaking in through the minefields, but the resistance disagreed, so he ultimately decided to go solo. The resistance didn't agree, and in the end, couldn't even come up with a decent plan. Just then, a group of Afghan militia came over, enthusiastically inviting Rango to join their horse race. What a surprise. Just as the horse race was heating up, a Soviet helicopter suddenly appeared and ruthlessly bombed the ground below. Afghan civilians were shot by Soviet helicopters. The scene was heartbreaking. Seeing this, Rango leaped onto the machine gun position, unleashing bullets in the Soviet helicopter, which exploded instantly. What a satisfying moment. The remaining Soviet planes quickly fled, and Rango sat in the rubble, pondering as he looked at the streets filled with bodies. He silently vowed to make the Soviets pay. The resistance invited Rango to evacuate, but he insisted on going to the Soviet base for revenge, leaving them in shock. Seeing the tragedy, Rango declared, "This is my war," and that night, he silently moved towards the Soviet base with Rani. Suddenly, an Afghan child emerged, parents killed by shelling, seeking revenge with Rango. Rango had no choice but to agree, and they buried explosives, preparing for a showdown as danger loomed. He had to find his commander, sneaking into the Soviet base and planting the bombs. Just when he was picking the lock, he was spotted by Soviet soldiers, and in a panic, Rango used his knife to take him out. That was a nail-biting moment. This alerted a bunch of soldiers, forcing Rango to retaliate as he stood and backed up, holding the situation steady. The previously buried explosives detonated one after another, turning the entire Soviet base into a sea of fire, while Rango was still engaged in intense combat inside the dungeon. A Soviet officer shot Rango's little buddy, and Rango got injured by shrapnel from the explosion. He had to pick up the little buddy and retreat as he followed Rani's guidance, and they successfully escaped through the sewer. Just as they were about to mount their horses, Soviet soldiers shot down the resistance fighters coming to help, and Rango pulled out his rocket launcher for revenge. This time I'm here to teach you a lesson. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting content. Bye.